What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the King Films College Football Playoff predictions and New Year's 6 Bowl predictions. Let's get right into it with our custom top 25 ranking. How this works is we have constructed a rankings of the top 25 college football teams, and of course this mirrors what the College Football Playoff Committee's rankings would look like, as opposed to the AP poll, which is very biased right now and does not take really into account teams' performance and is more or less just based on preseason expectations at this point. So, that being said, let's get into our bottom 9 teams here. We're starting with Maryland, a new team to the poll. The first 2 weeks there's been a lot of fluctuations because remember, this is based on team's performance, but Maryland got a gutsy Big Ten victory last week, and that's enough to put them on the poll. Kansas State went into Nevada and got a win. They also have a win over Stanford. So Kansas State is looking good. They appear on the AP poll as well. Then we're going to have Notre Dame at number 23. I know the AP poll has them a lot higher, but Notre Dame has not looked that great. In fact, this is the week that actually got them ranked. They had a good win over Purdue by a couple scores, so that will get them onto the number 23 spot, but a close game at FSU. I understand FSU is a hard environment, but that is a really bad team, and then inexcusable close game against Toledo, and that leaves Notre Dame at number 23. And as you can see on the right hand side, we have the next game for all of these teams. If it is a ranked game, it'll show here. So Notre Dame is playing 18 Wisconsin this week. Obviously, I have Wisconsin winning based on their performance this year. They've only played 2 games, so they should be fresher. This one's at a neutral site in Chicago. Should be a great game, and Wisconsin's really only played 2 games, one of which being a loss, and then I believe they beat Eastern Michigan. So they haven't really faced any competition either. I wouldn't be surprised if Notre Dame could squeak this game out and then kind of just be scheming their way. Number 22, we've got UCLA. They have a good win over LSU. We don't really know how good LSU truly is, though. But then they lost barely to Fresno State this week. Otherwise, they would have probably been near the top 10. But that loss to a great Fresno State team, you'll see them up here in the rankings later. And that leaves UCLA in kind of a limbo. Only the second Pac-12 team. The Pac-12 has fallen off in recent weeks. USC losing, Utah losing, and Arizona State losing at the hands of BYU. We'll get to them later. Iowa State's going to stay here at 21, a little lower than they are in the AP poll, just because, you can't be close with Northern Iowa and then you lose to Iowa by a lot. So Iowa State, I just don't like their prospects. I don't think they're a very good team. And we have number 20, Texas. Texas was not ranked last week, but as you may be able to see next to the Texas A&M icon, we have Arkansas ranked as a very good team here. And so I think Texas is going to be very good going down the stretch. Texas changed their quarterback to Casey Thompson, and remember, I'm high on Casey Thompson. I'll link it in the top right, but we had our preseason predictions video. I had him being one of the Heisman finalists, so he wasn't starting in those first couple of weeks, so obviously we're going to inflate Texas. Obviously, they beat up Rice, but that's not a very good team, and they'll move on this week in the 20 spot with that loss in their record. A team that doesn't have a loss is Texas A&M, and they've got a huge tester against Arkansas. The thing leading me away from this team, obviously they had the great win over New Mexico, who isn't a very good team, but they stayed close with Colorado. Granted, that was a pseudo home game for Colorado at Mile High. Texas A&M was in a hostile environment, but Minnesota had no problem with Colorado. So Texas A&M, there's a lot of question marks. In their first week game, they had a hard time pulling away as well, so I'm not convinced that Texas A&M is that good this season. Then we've got Wisconsin. Obviously, their only loss is to Penn State, which I have very highly rated, so we're not really sure how good Wisconsin is. I don't have any action on the Notre Dame-Wisconsin game. The betting locks will be linked in the top right here. Then we've got Ohio State at 17. I just have not been pleased with this Ohio State team. Obviously, they lost to Oregon, which I have ranked one spot higher than Penn State, so that's why they're above Wisconsin here. But Tulsa, this is a team that lost to UC Davis, and they're playing close with Ohio State on the road in, a brutal environment at Ohio State. Ohio State just hasn't been able to pull away from the teams. Minnesota, okay, maybe Minnesota's good. They blew out Colorado, who Colorado isn't supposed to be that good. But Minnesota, Ohio State was barely able to beat them. This just isn't the Ohio State team from the past years that we have this year. That being said, let's move on to the middle 8 teams, and we've got Auburn at number 16. They move up 5 spots despite losing to Penn State. I have Penn State as a very good football team, and I think Auburn proved that they are a good football team as well. And the reason they're moving up is pretty much I was basing my 21 ranking 2 weeks ago on them having played no one yet. So then they played Penn State very close, and that is a hostile environment on those whiteout games. So we're going to have Auburn at 16. Oklahoma still undefeated at 15. I don't like their prospects. I don't think they're that good of a team. Again, in my betting locks video, you'll see them featured, and we're not going with them, my friends. But Oklahoma, they've played in these close games all year. Obviously, they just barely beat Tulsa, and then we see Ole Miss absolutely smack them. And Oklahoma was at home for that game. So honestly, Oklahoma just hasn't pulled away from these cupcake games how I want them to. So they're just going to be at 15, but I'm not high on Oklahoma right now. I don't like the way they've been playing. Then we've got Fresno State at 14. They played Oregon close, then they go into UCLA and beat UCLA. Even if they hadn't beat UCLA, I would have put them on the rankings here, maybe like a 25 spot, because those are 2 good teams and they've played close to both. And that kind of validates Oregon as well, because we were questioning why Oregon was playing close to Fresno State. Well, we see the answer is that Fresno State's actually a very good team. Then we've got 13, BYU. They beat back-to-back AP-ranked teams, Utah and Arizona State, in the past 2 weeks. I don't have either of them ranked, but BYU has played well to start this season, and with that independent schedule, they will continue to have tests all the way down the road. They do have USC in that last week, so maybe they can work their way up to the college football playoff as a lesser independent, obviously Notre Dame being the main one. And we've got 12, Michigan. They cruised again this week, and I really value that win over Western Michigan that they have, because Western Michigan was able to beat Pitt this week, a Pitt team that looked very good. They had already beaten Tennessee, who also looked good. So we're going to have Michigan at 12 here, and I think that's warranted. Michigan State also has looked good this season. They went into Northwestern. They got the win there. Not really laboring for that one. Then they went into Miami, as we predicted, and beat them there. So Michigan State's played very well, and I think they have a great shot this next week, as you'll see in the betting locks video again. Then we've got number 10, Cincinnati, and I moved them down a couple of spots. They played close with Indiana, obviously. That's going to be a hard road environment, but, I don't value them as highly as of yet. And, until they've only really got that game against Notre Dame, and then maybe Memphis will be ranked at some point. Obviously, they got the fluky win over Mississippi State, but Cincinnati, they're going to have to prove something to me, maybe with a win over Notre Dame, if Notre Dame can knock off Wisconsin, to really prove that they're one of the best teams, because I'm not really sold on Indiana, and that was supposed to be one of their resume-building games. At 9, we've got Ole Miss. As I mentioned earlier, they smacked Tulsa, they smacked Louisville, who in turn beat UCF, a good UCF team. So I think this Ole Miss team could be a real force in the SEC West here, but we'll have to see what happens. And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, the top 8, and obviously, as we mentioned earlier, we've got Arkansas at number 8. They handled the Texas team. Obviously, I was not sold on them after week 1 when they had a hard time pulling away from Rice, but now we've seen the first 3 games play out, and this Arkansas team is legit. I think they're number 8 right now, and I would not be surprised if they could light up Texas A&M. I think it's a home game for Arkansas, so again, you'll see this in the predictions and betting locks video, but I've got Arkansas at number 8. And Clemson at number 7. I'm really not sold on this team, but if you look, this is the only ACC team that I have ranked, and for good reason. I think the AP poll has UNC ranked, but UNC lost to Virginia Tech, who just got smacked by West Virginia. They almost staged a comeback, but the ACC is really bad. Wake Forest is the only undefeated team in the ACC. Every other team has a loss. I think it's feasible that the ACC doesn't get a team. Clemson's number 7 right now, but they have not played very good in these past couple games. Obviously, their only losses to Georgia, and it was very close, and I value Georgia. As you can see, they're at the number 2 spot, so that is why Clemson is up this high. Obviously, they played against a great team, played them close, but I did not like that game against Georgia Tech this weekend. And at number 6, we've got Oregon, and obviously this is a good Oregon team because they played close to Fresno State, but they did get it done, unlike UCLA, and obviously they went into Ohio State. Enough said there. Obviously, we've got Iowa, who's put a beating to teams, including Iowa State and, of course, Indiana. And then we've got Florida at number 4. Yes, we've got Florida at number 4. Despite the loss to Bama, I don't know if any other team will even be able to play close to Bama this season. And Florida almost won that game, if not for that missed extra point. So we've got to put them at number 4 right now. Obviously, as you'll see in the next slide, that does not mean they're in the playoff, but I'll explain that when it happens. We do have that red line here. The committee likes to put their little top 4 into the thing, but obviously there's the SEC championship. There's the world's biggest cocktail party, Florida versus Georgia at some point, so that will be a great game as well. At number 3, we've got Penn State. Obviously, the great win over Auburn, and now I value Auburn as a team. It just is kind of a mutual game where it benefits both teams in my book. Penn State playing close to a good Auburn team like that, but we'll have to see what happens in the coming weeks. And then obviously we've got Georgia and then Alabama. Alabama actually jumped Georgia this week. Obviously Alabama, before beating Florida, had only beaten a unproven Miami team, to say the least. Obviously Michigan State beat them, but then Alabama beating this good Florida team on the road in a tough environment warrants them the number 1 overall spot here. And honestly, I don't know if they will lose this season, but we will have to see. So moving on into the New Year's 6 bowl predictions, let's start with the college football playoff. Obviously, as I mentioned before, we're not going to have 3 SEC teams because either Florida or Georgia will lose, and then obviously someone has to lose in the SEC championship game. So say Florida got to the SEC championship game and then lost to Alabama again, maybe that could give a spot to Georgia. They already have the win over Clemson, so that's just a scenario here. And then we've got Penn State and Oregon. Obviously, Iowa was ranked at number 5 over Oregon, but one of them would have to win the Big Ten championship, and I'm just going to say that it's Penn State right now because I have them ranked higher. So then we've got Oregon playing against Alabama in the Orange Bowl and Penn State and Georgia in the Cotton Bowl. In the Fiesta Bowl, we've got Arkansas against Michigan State, and this one is an at-large game, so we've got that one going here. And then we've got Oklahoma against Florida in the Sugar Bowl. This is a contract game, and as is the Rose Bowl game, where we've got Iowa against number 22 UCLA right now, and then we've got Cincinnati against Clemson in the Peach Bowl because the ACC while they don't have a contract, they are guaranteed a team in a bowl. So Clemson will be playing Cincinnati for the purpose of this video. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to stay tuned for both the college football betting locks and then the NFL betting locks videos later this week.